Hi folks, well as you can see the bike's inside and in bits again. The reason for that is that I've been trying to get to the bottom of this problem of the bike not having all the power that it should, and not sort of pulling smoothly across the rev range, but kind of having like fits and starts and stuff. Well, somebody suggested to me, a family member actually, on email, that it could be because I was using a gravity feed fuel system rather than a fuel pump that was causing this. So what I did was, when I got a chance, I went on Google and I looked up gravity feed, and I found forums saying the sort of things that I'd seen on the internet before I set it up as a gravity fed system. And a lot of these things, were saying that you can change your bike to gravity feed and it will work. But one guy said that you would lose basically your top end revs. Now that was interesting, because what happens with this bike with the gravity feed system is you get up to about maybe, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 RPM, and then it just doesn't go any higher. So that kind of fitted in with what that guy was saying on the internet. So what I decided to do, as I had a fuel pump for the bike already, I've basically rebuilt the fuel system again, and this time I've put the fuel pump back in, because I originally removed the fuel pump because I wasn't sure if it might be something to do with the starting problem. But now that I've resolved the starting problem, it doesn't do any harm to have the fuel pump back in. So what I'll do is I'll just show you what I'm talking about. So before, what we had was basically a hose coming down from the bottom of the tank onto the back of the carburetors, with a filter in the middle of the hose, and no fuel pump obviously. So what I've done is I've put a little steel bracket, you might be able to just see, I bolted it onto the chassis along with all these things that are earthed, bolted it on there to use as a kind of a bracket for the fuel pump. This is the fuel pump here itself. It's a brand new fuel pump that I got off eBay a few months ago when I was kind of doing the main part of the build. What I've done is I've cable tied it onto the bracket with 3 cable ties, and it's reasonably secure. Obviously, when they come from the factory, they have like a rubber thing that fits around them and slots over the bracket kind of thing, but I haven't got that, so I just cable tied it on. But it feels pretty secure. There's very little give in it. There's a little tiny bit of give, but I don't think that'll do any harm if I pull this thing up out of the way. So then we've got a hose going from the pump to the back of the carbs, and then we've got another hose here which is just tucked inside the chassis. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that onto the end of the fuel filter, which is attached to the fuel tank. I'll show you what I'm talking about. The tank obviously is not back on yet, but I'm going to put it back on shortly. So this is the fuel tank. So we've got the fuel filter there, we've got the banjo bolt, which is the same as what was on before. I've put a short kind of bit of 8mm hose there, just like about 2 or 3 inches, clipped it on. This bit of hose will be coming off, and the other bit that connects to the carbs will be going onto there, and that'll be my new fuel system. Then what I've had to do obviously is I've had to wire the fuel pump in, obviously, because it's electric. So what we've got here is we've got a fuel cut-off relay, which I think came with the original loom that I bought. I've put spade connectors onto the end of these wires and put them in, taped it all together, taped it all up to kind of keep moisture out and what have you. So essentially you've got 4 wires going into the fuel cut-off relay. So you've got 2 wires that comes from the coils. Well, actually, strictly speaking, they don't come from the coils, they actually come from the CDI. So they're connected into the CDI. For one reason or another, one of these is actually that the coil goes via the fuel cut-off relay. That's just the way I had to wire it because of what was already there. So you've got like the green one going to one coil. I think that's like that coil there, the 2 and 3 spark plugs, and the red wire goes to the 1 and 4 spark plugs coil. Obviously those are not the proper colours. It's supposed to be like blue yellow and yellow blue, but I don't have yellow and blue wiring, so I couldn't do that, so it's all just done with red and green, just like the rest of the bike. And then you've got 2 other wires. You've got this one here, which comes from, which is wired into, it's basically excuse me, spliced into crimped in with another circuit. What was the other circuit? Oh yeah, the other circuit is for like the radiator fan and the indicators, so I just spliced it in there, connected it with a spade connector, and that goes through one of these main fuses, which says fan, indicators and horn, and which is in turn wired into, which in turn gets its juice through the ignition barrel. So essentially it goes battery, ignition barrel, fuses, and then out to everything else, just the same as the rest of the circuits on the bike. So it goes out to the fuel relay, out to the fuel cut-off relay. The fuel cut-off relay is controlled by the CDI. So the juice comes through here, and then when it's activated, it goes out the other wire, which is here, and that goes into this this cable here, which is the wire that goes into the fuel pump itself. And then obviously this is like a dual core wire on the fuel pump, so you've got like a positive coming in from the fuel cut-off relay, and then you've got a negative that's earthed to the chassis. I've got, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, see I've got there's 2 places for Allen bolts in the chassis here, and I've got everything that needs earthed around this kind of area: starter motor, battery, regulator, all the rest of it. That's all earthed on there, and the ignition and also the fuel pump is all earthed off there. So essentially it's back to using a fuel pump again. So what I'm hoping is that this is going to pressurize the fuel into the carburetors, so that when you're kind of when you're accelerating, it'll go up to whatever revs it's meant to go up to, and it should be kind of like plenty quick enough. It should have like the original performance that a Fireblade would have had, which I think is about 115 bhp at the rear tyre. I can check that, but I think it's somewhere in that kind of ballpark. So that's pretty much it really. So all I've got to do now is put the airbox back on, put the tank back on, put the seat back on. I've got a couple of other bits and pieces. One of the indicators wasn't working, so while I've got it in bits, I'm going to replace that indicator and check that works. And once all that's done, it'll be ready to go out and test. I'm on night shift tonight and tomorrow night, so I won't be able to test it for a couple of days. But as soon as I get a chance to take the bike outside and test it, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take it for a run up the road, and we'll see if it drives like you would expect a Fireblade to. So that's pretty much it for now really. Everything else, oh yeah, the other thing I can mention while I'm at it actually is that I've taken the cycle speedo off because it didn't work. I'm not sure why it didn't work, but I couldn't get it to work, so I've removed that. So I'm going to get a GPS speedo instead. So that will cost me about 20 quid or something like that, but that's what I'll need to do, as I can't seem to get any kind of cycle speedo to work, so excuse me. So that's pretty much it for now. Alright, well, thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.